And what's interesting to know is that they had been trained in psychic abilities and scientific knowledge for the big trip. And I trained myself in lucid dreaming and how to have out-of-body experiences in a non-religious context. But after months and actually years of having out-of-body experiences, I learned, or I gathered all my experience, and it comes down to this, that there are various realities a person can experience aside from this physical plane. There are various beings, including people who have died, that one can encounter in these various realities. Time operates differently in different planes, and I think if any of you have had a near-death experience or an out-of-body from our world, we usually treat the world like it's dead. We treat matter like it's dead. In this, I'm wearing an EEG headset, and you'll see a response from the delta wave and how that actually comes right before a movement of, this is just tinfoil in this case. When she drew this, she had no idea what the picture was. But I asked her, send your mind to the future, and I want you to feel the motion of your arm, because I'm going to give you tracing paper. And your arm and your hand will be moving a certain way. And I want you to tune into that. What does your arm feel like? And then make a drawing on the paper. So basically, she was being telepathic with herself in the future. 1 hour later, 2 hours later, I show her this picture, I give her the tracing paper, and she traces it. And meanwhile, we're all like, if the number 9 will be drawn, this person assigned to the number 9 will be shown these butterflies. If the number 9 is not drawn, she'll be shown this pregnant mommy. And here's what she drew during her viewing session. Look at these images, especially the one at the bottom center. Doesn't all these images really connect with the flowers and the shape of the butterfly wings? It was just beautiful. I love this example. There are many examples like this that my friends have produced. And the reason I think this is so strong was because a few hours in the future, when she was shown the picture of the butterflies, because the number 9 was drawn, so we wait for the lottery to happen and we see the results, and then I show her the photograph. So more examples are in this book, Signal and Noise, if you're curious, but I'll stop with the remote viewing here. But here's the main points that I came to after doing all this work with remote viewing, that we are connected with reality beyond the physical senses. Information can be transferred across space and time. So in these cases that you just saw, people are receiving information from the future. And this being, I'm in this space, this in-between space with this being, and this is a drawing from my journal because I kept careful journals. This is a feminine being, and I was drawn to her. And for some reason, we had an intimate act together. And afterward, I was so taken by it. I had a friend of mine who's an artist recreate it. So I described it to her. I gave her this drawing, and just, it's kind of embarrassing to share it, but I think it's important. But for me, this is kind of sacred. But this is what she drew for me. This is what I experienced that night for me. And sometime after that, this may have even been last year, I went by myself to a place in Utah to do the same thing. And in Utah, I was there for 2 or 3 nights by myself in the desert. And I did a similar protocol that on my own. I spent a lot of time doing meditation, yoga, asanas, the yoga postures, and then setting intention out at night. And the first night it happened, nothing happened on my first try. I went to sleep, but at around 3 in the morning, it's as if I was roused from sleep, and there was this command to go outside. And I was in a yurt, so I left the yurt, I went outside, into the darkness of the sky and waited, and something showed up. But what I found, sadly, especially in the last year or so, is that psychic development doesn't require someone to have good ethics, and it doesn't improve someone's character. And I really wished it would. And that was part of my inspiration to teach this broadly. I write my books and my courses and teach the class in the classroom, because I thought that helping someone experience their deeper self would make them a better person. But what I found is it makes you more of who you are in either direction. So if you're a naturally compassionate, empathetic person, this will help you be more like that and make you feel more connected to others. But if you happen to be narcissistic or aggressive or arrogant or prideful, these psychic abilities will just make you more like that. It just adds fuel to the fire. You become more of an ass, basically. Here's a blunt lesson in empathy. I'm trying to get a message across because we have a challenge. We're spiritual beings. We do have a higher part of our brain functioning that makes us decent people, but we also have this ancient structure in the brain. And here's what I'm talking about. Right now, you can go online and find a statue of Buddha's head as a garden ornament. This is such an American thing. This is such a white American thing. Here's another one, meditating Buddha head for $69.95. Now, could you imagine? This is a lesson in empathy, right? I'm trying to make a point. Imagine if you go on to Amazon.com and then you see a Jesus garden outdoor statue. Would you ever see that in our culture? That's not okay. A Jesus head for your garden, right? You don't see that. It's just not, because we're predominantly Christian in this country, although there are many other religions here, but we're Christian based, right? So somehow for most of us, this is okay, this is not okay, this is okay. The thing is, for most people who have never had contact, the alien thing, extraterrestrial, is a joke. And you can make a garden planter out of an alien head like it's pretty much the same thing as this. So there's lacking sensitivity here. And you know, when I go to a UFO convention, I see those tables where they're selling the blow-up dolls, the t-shirts, the keychains. For me, it says there's a level of respect that's missing, that's not developed. So I'm not saying that these people who do this are wrong or bad. I'm not saying that, but it does reflect a low level of respect, understanding, and care for these beings who are so different from us. And maybe it's because we haven't had enough experience with them in person. So experience will help change us. So we need more experience. But I say when trinkets are no longer sold at UFO conventions, that'll be a sign that we've matured as cosmic citizens. And we take this a little more seriously and acknowledge that these are distinct entities that have something to offer us. Here's another example. I mean, basically, you know, this is cultural appropriation. White people dressing up as Native Americans, white people dressing up as people from Mexico. You know, it's not that different from this. It's not that different from this. And we do it all the time. It's just a sign we have a long way to go to develop who we are as human beings and as members of the cosmic family. A lot of people ask, why don't the UFOs just land on the White House lawn and show themselves to everyone? It's a typical question. It's usually asked to make a point. And this is why. This is real. I know many of you are aware of this already. This is real. There's a discussion about issuing Bigfoot hunting licenses. If you don't trust this source, here's another source, NPR. Oklahoma state lawmaker introduces Bigfoot hunting season. Here's another question, another way of asking this. Who would you shoot first? This is meant to highlight our implicit bias. Would you shoot the nice looking alien who looks like someone from Scandinavia? Or would you shoot the alien who looks like an insect? Because apparently there's some that look like that. Would you shoot the alien who looks like a lizard? Which one is good and which two are bad? You know, this is giving you a sense of where we are, because we just know right now, if the one in the middle landed on the White House lawn, how many people would just pull out their weapons and just start shooting without asking questions, right? That's where we're at, especially in this country. Think about the last 2 weeks. I mean, many of you watching right now are in Boulder. You know, someone just walked into a grocery store and killed 10 people. And then a couple of weeks ago, someone killed Asian people at various spas. And of course, the whole racism in this country and around the world is still a big problem. And COVID is showing us that. we have a lot of work to do. We have to acknowledge our unconscious bias. And the problem, you don't have to read all this, but basically, let's say hundreds of thousands of years ago when humans were growing all over the planet, we didn't really bump into each other. So if someone with this color skin saw someone, it was very rare to see someone with a different color skin. And when they did, it was very fearful. There was a lot of violence. And that part of our brain still exists and it still functions. But we have higher evolved parts of the brain that keep us from acting out on our fear response. For most people, for some people, this is the seed of our racism, of our bias toward each other, of how we don't treat each other very well, because that part of our brain, the older part, still has too much power. And maybe the higher parts of our brain aren't functioning because of how we were raised, the belief systems we were raised with, what we're seeing in the media, in Hollywood. All of this has to do with how well we can work with or against that ancient part of the brain, which is designed to protect us. It's a protective mechanism, but it's maladaptive. It doesn't work anymore in today's society where we're all mixed together. We're all face to face with people who look very different from us, and we still need to learn how to get along and how to not respond to that part of the brain that just wants to kill anyone who looks different from us. So we need more education. And this has to do with how we deal with non-humans or ETs. So if you take this stuff seriously, I think there are 3 steps we all need to take. That we need to be aware, to admit that we have implicit bias and it's unconscious. You can't feel it, but it's operating all the time. We have to be concerned about the consequences about our biases, including social inequality and legalized oppression that we still take advantage of. And then we should learn to replace those responses with non-prejudiced ones. So acts of charity and social justice activity are very important. You know, and you might be asking, I thought we were talking about psychic abilities and meditation and spiritual stuff. Here's my point is there's much more down to earth stuff, actions that we need to focus on that will have a greater impact in the near term. I want to quote him where his ET contact Antarel says this: "Remember what you've learned, that the human being is pure by nature, and his actions are what tune him in with love, the most powerful force of creation.